Major history. Heisman Trophy voting. The largest margin of victory for Joe Burrow. 841 first-place votes. That's second most ever. But he received 2,608 points. Jalen Hurts received 762 points. The difference, 1846, which makes it the largest margin of victory in Heisman Trophy voting. There it is as it shakes out. Jalen Hurts finishes second in Heisman voting, followed by Justin Fields and Chase Young. Interesting here, Chase Young got the second most first-place votes with 20. That's how big of a win it was for Joe Burrow.
Yeah, rightfully so. Those numbers tell the story of how dominant this season was for a kid who's going home with the Maxwell Award, the Davey O'Brien Award, the AP College Football Player of the Year, Walter Camp Award, the Johnny Unitas Award, and now the most prestigious, adding a Heisman Award to that trophy room that has bolstered over the last couple weeks.
And now he becomes the second player in LSU program history to win the Heisman. The first, the late, great Billy Cannon in 1959. Joe Burrow, your Heisman Trophy winner. Here's his reaction to being named the Heisman Trophy winner.
Coach O.
Take your turn.
You have no idea what you mean to my family. You know, I didn't play for 3 years. You took a chance on me, not knowing if I could play or not. And I'm forever in your... forever grateful for you. Can you imagine a guy like Coach O giving me the keys to his football program? He just means so much to me and my family. And to LSU. I sure hope they give him a lifetime contract. He deserves it.
How awesome is that? And it's not really about the Heisman Trophy when you step back. It's about the relationship. It's about the legacy that Joe Burrow will leave in the state of Louisiana, the connection that he had with the people, being an Ohio kid. And now he makes history. 97.6% of the votes, most ever. Barrett, when you see Joe Burrow emotional and you see the connection that he made with head coach Ed Orgeron, what's your reaction to seeing that play out as he earns a Heisman Trophy?
Well, that Ed Orgeron's vision as the head coach of the LSU Tigers has finally come to fruition. I mean, Ed Orgeron, for those who don't know him, it's hard not to like him. I've been around him a bunch, especially this year, seen LSU 5 times, and he's always forthcoming, and he's always been honest, and he's honest with all of his players. He lets players know where they stand, and sometimes that truth hurts. And for him to take a chance, and Joe mentioned it in his speech, which is one of the best speeches in terms of Heisman Trophy acceptance speeches that I think we've ever had, that it was a big risk for Ed Orgeron, and Joe didn't say it on the stage, but it was a big risk knowing last year what Ed Orgeron was facing in terms of his own job. So I think Joe is grateful for Ed. Ed's grateful for Joe. Those two, that marriage really has allowed LSU to become what it is right now, and there's no turning back. So I think that when you look at the legacy of Joe Burrow, it's not going to be a transfer quarterback. It's not going to be a guy who just turned around LSU's season and made this season magical. It's a guy who I think for himself turned himself into one of the best perhaps in college football history and awoke a sleeping giant, his program, at the same time.
Joe alluded to it there in his speech. 3 years on the bench, 3 years getting reps, and then gets a chance under Coach O from relative ambiguity to now a national brand name, if you will. Have we ever seen a catapult of this nature in such a short amount of time?
Yeah, I mean, the two that popped to my mind recently were Johnny Manziel back in 2012, because nobody was really expecting anything of Texas A&M in their first season in the SEC. And really, Jamel Showers was the #1 quarterback coming out of spring practice that year. Johnny Manziel took the job in fall camp. And the other one to me is Cam Newton, going from Blinn Junior College, winning a national championship, to winning a national championship at Auburn in 2010. Those are the two that sort of come to mind. But for Joe, I think it's bigger than that, because of what he meant to LSU. LSU's offense has been a dinosaur. And I think part of the legacy and a big reason why he set records in terms of voting is because everybody recognized that LSU's offense was stuck in the Stone Age, and that Joe Brady, the passing game coordinator, combined with Joe Burrow, not only transformed that team this year, but finally made LSU realize what it could become. So his legacy is multi-layered. And I think for him personally, a story of redemption. He talked about how impoverished the area that he grew up in was. It shows that transfer quarterbacks can be successful at an elite level. And it shows that a program like LSU can be redefined in 1 year. And Joe Burrow did that, because last year, let's be honest, he was just an okay quarterback. He was a pretty good signal caller. In 1 year, with dedication and with commitment from himself and from that staff, LSU's become what it should have been all along.
Barrett, you have a vote for the Heisman Trophy. Can you reveal your votes now, and what did you make of the final voting?
Yeah, I can. Like pretty much everybody in America, I had Joe Burrow #1. I had, with my second spot, I had Justin Fields, and then Jalen Hurts I had #3. We only get to pick 3. I would have probably gone Jonathan Taylor #4, just because I don't think he got recognized for the season that he had, the Wisconsin running back. I'm surprised, honestly, that the Ohio State contingent, that they got 2 players there. Because I think a lot of voters, I don't really care about this on my ballot, but a lot of other voters, I think, probably would and do have a little bit of a holdup putting 2 players from the same school on their ballot. So just the fact that Chase Young and Justin Fields were there together was a big surprise to me. And because of that, I actually thought Jalen Hurts would finish second, just because the 2 Buckeyes and potentially 3 Buckeyes with J.K. Dobbins finishing just out of the top 5 would all sort of split votes. But it pretty much went pretty close to what I expected. I went in thinking that Joe Burrow was going to win this thing by a landslide. I thought it was going to be a pretty big landslide in terms of the records that it set. Maybe a little bit surprised about that, because knowing some people that have some votes, there are a few contrarians out there.
Staggering numbers, no doubt. Burrow becomes the 3rd straight Heisman Award winner that was a transfer. 3 of the 4 guys on the stage tonight transferred at one point in their college football career. What does that say about the state of college football right now?
Well, that what we're doing in terms of the transfer portal is working, and it's working especially for quarterbacks. I know people seem to think that this is the death of college football, that you have college football free agency right now, and the truth of the matter is, look, there's only one football, and there are a ton of really good quarterbacks. And coaching staffs like to stack great quarterback on great quarterback, because it builds a culture of competition within your football program, which is good. It's good for the players, and it's good for the success of the program. But at some point, we saw this with Jalen and we saw this with Joe, you got to look around and say, hey, where am I going to get my snaps? And these kids at these great programs, these 4- and 5-star kids who aren't starting, they're good enough to start. They're good enough to play. And they're good enough to be developed, like Joe Burrow, into Heisman Trophy winners. So to me, it's a good thing that all these kids, or 3 of these 4 kids, were transfers, especially from the quarterback's perspective now, that's sort of a new sort of creation in the world of the Heisman Trophy with 3 straight transfer quarterbacks. To me, it says something that I think people should wrap their arms around and not push away from, that the transfer portal, especially for quarterbacks, is a very good thing, because it gives the best players in college football a chance to start and play significant snaps at the most important position.
It was funny because Chase Young joked with Justin Fields, saying if Joe Burrow had stayed, he would have been the starter and he would have been leading us to what we did this season. Instead, LSU earning the #1 spot in the college football playoff ranking, going to take on Oklahoma in the college football playoff semifinals. When you take a look back at the season of Joe Burrow, and the one thing that stands out to me, Barrett, is the fact that he was so good at extending plays, which makes him NFL ready. And so many Heisman moments, and you got to watch him firsthand. What stood out to you in terms of Heisman moments?
The second game of the season, I was lucky enough to be there in Austin, Texas, when they played Texas. And look, Texas's defense was a joke this year. We all see that now. But in that game, Texas lit him up. I mean, Texas came with 8 guys, 9 guys. I mean, they could have come with 15 guys. And Joe Burrow had a tremendous passing day. And I swear he got hit on every play. I mean, he was getting his teeth knocked in because if you remember early in the season, LSU's offensive line was just sort of okay. It wasn't that great. And Joe had to do all of this by himself. And the defining play for me, I mean, we can sit back and talk about Heisman moments, and there were plenty for Joe Burrow this season. But the Heisman moment to me was in the fourth quarter. LSU really should have been bleeding out the clock. It didn't, which was by choice, and showed me that they were actually married to this new system. But the defining play of that game was that catch and run by Justin Jefferson down the left sideline, in which Joe Burrow basically threw in the middle of 3 Longhorn defenders in the air on a dime across the middle. Justin Jefferson broke a tackle and took it the distance. That, to me, when I saw that happen, was like, oh, wow, okay. This kid gets it. His pocket awareness is off the charts, and the offense that he's in flat out is not going to let up. So I left that game thinking that this was going to be just an incredibly magical season, not just for Joe Burrow, but for the LSU Tigers.
The ultimate prize being handed out on January 13th. Burrow now with that heavy trophy to carry along with him. Is that a weight on his back, or is that just another notch in his belt?
I think for some guys, it would definitely be a weight on his back. For Joe Burrow, no, because I think Joe Burrow, he straddles the line and sometimes veers on one side or the other between arrogance and confidence, which is a good thing if you're a quarterback. And I think especially in this case, because you do have to go play for a national championship and a national semifinal, for Joe Burrow, that's a good thing, because now that he's got that Heisman Trophy, I don't think he's going to view this as pressure. I think he's going to view this as the next challenge. And we've all seen Joe Burrow thrive on those challenges throughout the course of his career. So, yeah, I think for some guys, they'll never admit it. But, yeah, that's a burden. Being the Heisman Trophy winner, playing in a national semifinal, or back in the day, a BCS national championship game. I think for Joe Burrow, he thinks of this like, bring it on. Let's go. Let's see what the next challenge is and watch me overcome this. We'll see if he can, because there are 3 other really good teams in the college football playoff. But I think this is going to add more fuel to Joe's fire, which we've already seen. It burns pretty hot right now.
I just want to reiterate here, largest margin of victory in Heisman Trophy history. Heisman Trophy history here. I mean, this is absolutely impressive. 97.6% of the votes, most ever, all time. He finished 1,846 points ahead of Jalen Hurts, most all time, the largest ever. I mean, this is so impressive what Joe Burrow has done. And it's not just all Joe Burrow, as you know, Barrett, because a lot of the credit goes to the other Joe Brady.
Yeah. It does. I mean, Joe Brady, young kid, comes in from the Saints, passing game coordinator, comes in to revitalize that offense. And I think to Ed Orgeron's credit, he basically threw his chips into Joe Brady's on his table and said, look, I know you're a kid. Go do this thing. And Joe Brady has done a great job of that. And really, I don't think Steve Ensminger gets enough credit, because I asked Ed Orgeron this week when we talked to him about Steve Ensminger, who still actually is their offensive coordinator. And he called Steve Ensminger the real MVP, because Steve Ensminger, older guy, LSU lifer, been around the block about 8 times. He gracefully, I wouldn't say stepped aside, but made room for this young buck, Joe Brady, to come in and take over the passing game, because what Steve Ensminger was doing just wasn't as cutting edge maybe as it should have been. So everything about this LSU team has been magical, from the coaching staff to the coaching decisions to Joe Brady rocketing up the coaching charts and winning the Broyles Award and probably getting thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars thrown at him this offseason. I mean, everything about this has been just magical for LSU, and they've got 2 more wins to cap it off and finish that storybook. And like I said, we'll see if they can do it. But yeah, getting back to your original question, Joe Brady and that offensive staff, to finally come through and pull through with an offseason promise that LSU seemingly has been promising for the last 6 or 7 years through the Ed Orgeron era and through the Les Miles era, to finally do it. I mean, it makes LSU fans, I think, feel like the last 6 or 7 years have been worth it, because I don't think anybody expected this kind of season offensively from LSU in anybody's wildest dreams.
Led the nation in total offense, an eye-popping 554 yards per game. And Joe Burrow was clearly not the favorite coming into the season. In fact, he was a 200-1 underdog in the preseason. And then as we got closer and closer, he was a minus 30,000, which was ridiculous. You got to put down $300 to win $1. In terms of the favorite for next year, Barrett, Justin Fields in 2020. But as you know here, sometimes it's about the guy that's way down on the list that wins the Heisman, like Joe Burrow.
It is. Of those people, I still would throw my money at Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence, I think, is just phenomenal. And the fact that no one watched him play, I think, is a credit to how good he has been the last couple of months, because that Clemson team's just been destroying everybody. On that list, if I had to cherry pick somebody that's a little bit farther down, my dude Keaton Slovis at USC. I think USC's a pretty darn good program. I think what they have in terms of quarterback, not just with Slovis, but the guys they have behind him, will make all of them better. I think Clay Helton having a little bit more stability will make that program better. The path in the Pac-12 South to be successful and earn a spot in a conference title game and a college football playoff is open for anybody in that division. They have the athletes there. So if I had to go dark horse, my dude Keaton Slovis, I'll take him all day long at plus 1,000. That's a pretty good investment.
I just want to follow up on what you said about Trevor Lawrence, about in terms of being the favorite. Does he put up enough numbers to win a Heisman Trophy? Yeah, he's really good, but we saw it's about the eye-popping numbers, about the 48 passing touchdowns, getting to 50. All three quarterbacks that were Heisman finalists had 50 total touchdowns. Burrow had 51. Jalen Hurts had 50 total, as did Justin Fields. So it's like we have to have these numbers, and Trevor Lawrence, it doesn't put up those kind of numbers.
For me personally, it doesn't, because, I mean, I think if you have video game stats, you have video game stats, and context always matters, whether it be how many quarters you play, what system you play in, whatever. So for me personally, it won't matter. For others, I don't know. But here's the thing with what your point is, and I think it's a very important one, is that Justin Fields didn't play that much in the fourth quarter either. So his numbers could have been much better. And if that were the case, okay, then does Joe Burrow have as much? Does he have that biggest margin of victory ever tag attached to his Heisman Trophy win this year? Probably not. You go back to last year when Kyler Murray won it. What was the joke for 2/3 of the season? Tua hasn't thrown a pass in the fourth quarter, and yet when Tua does start having some tests late, he doesn't necessarily come through, and Kyler Murray goes and wins the Heisman Trophy. So I think there is something to that. But also, and I think this is on the other side of the coin, for some Heisman Trophy voters, there is some aspect of a lifetime achievement award to it. And since next year will most likely be Trevor Lawrence's last in college football, unless something really bizarre happens, I do think that there might be a few folks who say, all right, look, last season, that last season being this season, went pretty well for Trevor and nobody noticed. So now's the time to recognize the greatness of Trevor Lawrence. So I think it does work both ways. But I do think in this day and age of wide open offenses, that voters should take a little bit more of a detailed view into things and understand that video game stats are nice, but not all stats, not all systems, not all teams, and not all coaching staffs are created equal. And if Trevor doesn't play for the fourth quarter of 70% of their games, then you should adjust your view of his stats accordingly.
That is Barrett's ballot, and it's on the money. We appreciate the time. A historic day for Joe Burrow and a historic day for college football. Plenty more coming up as Joe Burrow is named the 2019 Heisman Award winner. Plenty more coming up here on HQ.